everyone. We are going to get started. So, should I have my whistleblower whistle again? All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for sticking around for the end of the day. We've had a packed house today, and thanks for everyone that's staying for the panel. Thank you to all my virtual viewers. We've had a couple hundred virtual viewers out there. I want to remind everyone that this event does, you guys, there's 2 seats right here if you want to take those 2. I want to remind everyone that you can catch all of these sessions on demand up until 5 days. So if you have any problems, just email anyone on my team, and we can definitely give you guys access to the virtual link if you don't already have it. So one of the things that we've been doing for the past year and a half, really, since we've been back on the road, since COVID, is in each city that we travel, we select a small group of honorees, and the way we do that is we pull our local database, and the names that were submitted are our honorees today. And what we ask on the questions that we send out is who would you recommend to be one of our honorees, who is going above and beyond and doing great work in the industry. We know everyone here is doing great work, so we thank you all. But today we do have a group of honorees that we want to recognize. My first person I have is Andrew Albright. He is the CISO at Domino's. Andrew Albright. Well, come on up, Andrew. I have something for you. Congratulations. And thank you for all the work you do at Domino's. Now, next we have, I think, your competitor, Pradeep. And this was not on purpose this way. Raga, I'm not going to mess your last name up. The Director of Cybersecurity Architecture from Little Caesars. Congratulations. Tim Massey is the VP IT Security at Carhartt. Tim, are you here? I know everyone that I have they were here earlier. He may be out there, so I will check in with him again later. We have Tiana Brandon is the Information Security Manager at Procter & Gamble. Tiana, are you here? Tiana, are you here? Okay, Roxy Phillips is from General Motors, and she is the Cyber Security Analytics Manager. Congratulations, Roxy. I have Randall Hall. He's a Senior Information Security Analyst at Lansing Community College. Thank you for all your hard work. I have Charisse Caldwell-Williams is the IT Manager at DTE Energy. All these women in cyber, it's so nice to see. Congratulations, and thanks for all your hard work. Chuck Flagg is Executive Director of Information Technology Infrastructure at Oakland Community College. Chuck Flagg, are you here? Chuck Flagg. Guess all these people got called away. Edna Matea is the Information Technology and Internal Auditor at Plex. How do I say your first name? Anita. Anita, thank you for all your hard work. Denise Browning is the Information Security Manager at General Motors. Denise. Congratulations. You know, I've been putting on these events for a long, long time, and when I had a different company, and back 20 years ago, we'd maybe have two women in the audience, so it's really nice to see the progression of women in cyber. So we still love all the men here, but it's just nice to see a diversified audience. So congratulations to all of our women today. Really excited today on our panel. I have Richard Stiennon from IT Harvest. He's a research analyst. You guys may all know him from his security yearbook. He puts out every year, and he is a sought-after speaker, and we're very lucky to have him here today. So thanks for being here, Richard. And we all love this next person, Arun DSouza, who is the Chief Information Security Officer at Nexteer Automotive. Everyone loves Arun. So, Dan Lohrmann is the CISO and our keynote speaker and our moderator today at Presidio. Thank you. Dan did an awesome job with the keynote. And last but certainly not least, I have Maureen Niemiec, who so kindly joined the panel. She is from Kontoor brand. She's the Governance Privacy Risk Chief Executive Chief of Staff. So congratulations to Maureen. Maureen, yeah. And then the other people, I'll announce your name again if you're here, but I'm going to turn it over to Dan. He's going to moderate the panel. I kind of just introduced most of the panel, but I'll let them do the introductions of themselves. So let's welcome our panelists and our moderator.
Thank you very much. Down here. Just let's give a big round of applause for Kim. She does a fantastic job. I mean, I've worked with Kim for many years, and I just think these FutureCon events are becoming better and better all the time. So thank you for all your work. What I'd like to do, we have a great panel of experts here. I'm just really excited about this conversation. We're going to have maybe 30 minutes-ish of discussion amongst us, and we're going to open up to the questions from the audience. So get your questions ready. We'll start off, and I'm just going to let them, each of them, we're going to go down and maybe a minute or two, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, on who they are, what they do, their day job, and then go ahead and if you could, Maureen, we'll start with you, but we're going to basically, what is the one thing that's top of mind right now after you introduce yourself? But we'll start off with, and I'll introduce them individually, but Maureen Niemiec is the Chief of Staff at the Office of the CISO for Kontoor Brands. Maureen, welcome.
Oh, why, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, is that working? Yeah. Okay, great. My name is Maureen Niemiec from Kontoor Brands. Most people do not know what Kontoor Brands is, but generally speaking, almost everybody probably has Wrangler or Lee clothing. So that's what we make, and it's all about the Kontoor from that standpoint. And I still keep asking the CEO when he's going to let us go to the rodeo in Las Vegas.
Yep.
So kind of my day job, as Chief of Staff is I kind of try to corral everybody in the CISO organization so that we're working on the right things together. There were a lot of relationship building. Kontoor was spun off from VF Brands, which is Vans and North Face that everybody's more familiar with. And so we were kind of picked up and plunked out with very few systems with the exception of the legacy manufacturing. We built everything from scratch. So operations built everything. 18 months into it, they said, oh, we probably need a CISO. So we're playing a little bit of catch up there, really trying to get ahead of the controls and being able to put those in there. And that's probably the biggest challenge that we have is we're trying to move from that very tactical, what do I have to do in the next minute, the next hour, the next day, the next week, to what is it that we really need to do going into the future. It's not just an alphabet soup of solutions, but really how do we make that security and how do we make the limited dollars that we get kind of, the best bang for the buck.
Great, thank you so much. And we were talking to Maureen earlier. She was mentioning also many years experience with General Motors. So really glad to have you on the panel. Thanks so much for being here. Next we have Richard Stiennon. He is the research analyst at IT Harvest, author of Security Yearbook 2022. Known Richard many years, those in Detroit area. He is such a fantastic resource. If you don't know Richard, I encourage you to reach out to him. Really excited to have him. Great background with Gartner and a wide variety of other experiences. So Richard, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's kind of nice to be on the other side of the podium from you because that's how I first met Dan. I was the moderator at a Gartner event, and he was on the panel and talking. So it's kind of fun to be in the town center here because this is where my cybersecurity career started at a company called Netrex, and they're the next building down and 14 floors up. They were the first MSSP in the United States, and later on became IBM's managed security services. But I moved on from there to Gartner. So I was Gartner analyst for 4 years, and then struck off on my own, and that's what IT Harvest is all about. And I guess what keeps me, gets me up in the morning is my constant drive to completely curate all the data on all the vendors, of which this morning I count 3,311 cybersecurity vendors with pretty good representation in this room. So what's top of mind for me this past week, of course, has been the Biden White House's national cyber strategy. I've read every one that came before, and this is the first one that I think is getting people rather excited because it was actually, hey, it's well written, it has goals like a strategy should, and think that it's time to start paying attention to what the government's doing because I think they're coming to our aid.
Thank you. Great comment. So next we have Jason Mafera, who's the Field CTO North America at IGEL Technology. And Jason, welcome.
Oh, thanks. So it's great to be here. I'm, in my day-to-day job, it's really focused around looking at where things are going, the future strategy and direction, and helping to set for our customers and clients essentially the solutions of the future that help to deliver a more secure and sustainable environment for their IT operations. So I work with and am peers with our corporate CIO and CISO and global CTO, and that team together works to set that strategy and direction for the company based on what we learn from the needs of our customers. So, as I look at where things are going, and if any of you were in the presentation I did earlier in the morning, it's really focused around this transition that's happening, the hybrid work that we find ourselves in, and how we start to apply new technologies and new methodologies to help secure that access of the future. And so that starts with, transitioning how we do things today, starting to make that edge component more secure while things continue to transition into the cloud and the hyperscalers. So that's where I focus on a day-to-day, and what I've heard most, I guess, loudly from the folks that I talk to is really, the shift that's happening has taken budgets and constrained them, and the lack of qualified and specialized IT skills, that the skills gap that's out there continues to cause challenges, and really it's about finding ways to do more with less. So that's where I focus a lot of my attention, finding ways to be that force multiplier for IT ops while delivering better security. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And last but certainly not least, we're very excited to have Arun DSouza, who is the Chief Information Security Officer at Nexteer Automotive. And welcome, and please tell us about your background and also what's top of mind for you today.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Richard. So I'm Arun DSouza, Chief Information Security and Privacy Officer at Nexteer Automotive. I built an integrated security and privacy program, in fact, a multi-award winning program from the ground up, and a team of who I really love, which is 50% men and 50% women. Woohoo! Women, come on, cheer, man. And obviously, it's a multi-dimensional thing. We provide a lot of services, strategies, and everything. But I think that we have two taglines of our program. One is security powered by people, and the second is the power of federation, notion of building length, breadth, and depth alliances across the internal stakeholders and across the external partners to drive synergies and benefit everyone. From the very beginning, the key premise on which I built the program was identity is the cornerstone for secure delivery of digital application services, what I call the notion of anytime, anywhere authorized access that helped us during COVID to do a lift and shift seamlessly and continue as if nothing had happened. Other than that, I was sitting in my basement freezing. No, but So with that, the other thing that we've tried to adopt as particularly a unifying force for security and privacy is zero trust, right? Because zero trust is a lot of things. It is a combination of people, process, and technology, but most importantly, a cultural change on how you approach security, because no longer is it like, I'm sitting in the company within the castle and moat, I'm safe. You could be working from anywhere. So it changes the focus from the network to the user's application data. So that's a big paradigm shift, right? Now, as to what is top of mind for me today, look, I'm from manufacturing. So IoT security to me is really top of mind because, as a company tries to add these sensors for increasing cycle time, efficiencies, people plug anywhere, anytime, anything, right? So as a CISO, if I don't see it, I cannot control it. So for me, visibility of these IoT devices is very, very key. Because if you look at some other macro trends like 5G and the ability to connect anything, anywhere, and the propensity in manufacturing to save money by having people connect remotely to your OT network and they may piggyback in, that's a big concern to me because if you don't do it in a proper manner with zero trust principles and the proper multi-factor and everything, for example, some famous breaches, you could have production downtime. That is a really deadly one in manufacturing because you can lose money, you can lose your reputation, lose your customers. So I would say to me, IoT security is, and speaking of IoT security, the other thing that also concerns me is the security and privacy risk nexus of the IoT. So what I'm saying is that as you all heard of things like GDPR, where you could have fines up to 4% of your revenue, double jeopardy and everything. If you imagine on the plant floor, there's a camera and somebody from Europe is walking by and a picture is taken, it's posted on the internet or Twitter, there can be ramifications. So people don't think about that. In your private life as well, that security and privacy risk nexus is very important because like the Samsung TV spying on you or Amazon, Echo emailing a conversation. So guys, think very seriously about those things. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So what I'd like to do, go back to Maureen. I'd want to come back and start off. If one quick question, people in the back, if you could just be a little bit quieter because we can, a little bit of echo back there. So appreciate it. At the top of mind for everyone is nation-state attacks. We see the big cyber threat landscape changing. So from your perspective, Maureen, what is the real threat for a quote-unquote ordinary organization? I don't mean, say ordinary, your organization is extraordinary, so I don't mean ordinary in that way. But I mean, like it's not a Fortune 5,000, Fortune 2,000 business, not a defense industry type of thing. But what is on your mind and what around cyber threats, and how much should organizations be concerned? How much is your organization concerned around the cyber threat landscape changing?
That is a really good question because, again, in the grand scheme of things, we're a relatively small organization, and people might think, well, you make jeans, like how bad can it be? One of the biggest threats that we actually have is the whole counterfeiting part, on how quickly domains and our name is stolen, and then all of a sudden there's all these products. I mean, we are constantly playing whack-a-mole, no kidding, with all of these that are coming up because our IP, our whole product line is what we are. And so that's something that we find very challenging because it's so quickly for people to spin that stuff up. And no matter how quickly you can train that, you can track that. So that's probably the biggest challenge that we have. One of the back-end challenges that we also find is really helping the business to understand the value of the intellectual property. I mean, there's value in how our denim is made and how we process water and those types of things that we have to actually help teach the business to help protect that as well as putting kind of the controls around those. And as a relatively young organization, it's really tough to kind of get the business to understand, yeah, this is really valuable. So those are probably the two key challenges that we have, as it's associated with it, in the cyber world, as well as all of the other, phishing exercises that we get.
Great, thanks. But over to Richard on the same kind of question. But Richard, you have research. Richard works with all the top industry companies. The Yearbook really has a survey of all these different technologies and solutions. I mean, how are you seeing the cyber threat landscape change?
Yeah, I think the rise of the solar winds problem is the greatest threat. It's an old problem, right? People somehow interfere with software updates. And unfortunately, all of us in the room have always told everybody, we live by the mantra, patch, patch, patch. Update as soon as it's available. This one's really critical, so you really have to update. Well, that's playing right into the hands of the attackers. All they need to do is find some new 0-day, announce that that's happening, force Microsoft to update everybody with a backdoor that they installed. I think and those attackers are all nation states, as far as I know. So the GRU, military intelligence in Russia, the SRV, the regular spies in Russia, the NSA, who has compromised the Microsoft update process. And these are the ones that are really going to get us. And we have no solution. I've been waiting a year and a half for vendors to come to me and start telling me about their SolarWinds solution. The only thing that anybody can come up with is, hey, SolarWinds, you've got to do a better job of application development. Totally agree. Everybody should do a better job. But we're not going to solve the SolarWinds problem by assuming that 4 million ISVs around the world are actually going to get good at developing software. Not going to happen. Certainly doesn't happen in the U.S. military, right? So they've got millions of lines of code that have never, ever been reviewed for security. They've got their own problems.
Great. Jason, same question, but if you could start also, I'm going to turn a little bit with this as well. If you want to comment on threats, this is fine, but what is one or perhaps two things that you're seeing organizations do over the past year, your organization is doing to strengthen your cyber defenses? What's the top response to the increase in cyber threats?
Yeah, I think so. When it comes to the response, it really comes down to where they can most effectively do risk mitigation in a way that's cost effective, right? And so it spans the gamut. Like when I look at it from a perspective of, as an organization, IGEL as an organization, we have to essentially look at it from both sides. It's not only what's happening with the customers and where their needs are and how we can help to address some of those needs in a cost-effective way, but also on the other side, beyond being a vendor, the things that we do produce, we have to look at how we do that so we don't have a problem like SolarWinds, right? If we're delivering those security solutions that help to mitigate some of those challenges, we also have to be very prescriptive in how we manage our code development and how we go through that process to make sure that we're not introducing vulnerabilities into those environments that essentially our job is to try and protect. So I think we've seen it as, a continued evolution, I guess, if you will, that, you have to stay ahead of the game, and it really is an arms race, if you will, that, looking at it from both sides really gives you a perspective that is a little broader, I think, and that's, I think what I've seen most recently.
Everyone, same question for you. I mean, how are you thinking about threats, and then how are you responding to it in your organization?
I think I'll give a two-part answer, really. The first thing is, real-world conflicts, real-world macro risks, like the environmental pressures, they cast a long shadow, right? And cyber risks, by nature, increase due to this uncertainty and chaos. So what's important to do is to be proactive measures to take in our priority, and what you have to do is identify your critical assets and stack ranking them based on business risk so you can better protect them and apply techniques of zero trust. At the same point in time, if you're thinking of high threat areas, countries and stuff, you can take controls at the email security boundary, at the cloud security boundary and all that, and be proactive about that. If conflict arises, make sure that nation is blocked in various platforms because, it's always an ingress point for things like bad spam and ransomware and stuff. From our perspective within Nexteer, the two things that, we've done many good things, but two I'm mostly proud of are one, we've invested in IoT security platform because remember I said IoT security is top of mind and been working with the vendor to increase the product feature set and do more and more for us to strengthen IoT security. That's been a big one. Now, all of you must have heard the notion of, a chain is as strong as weakest link, right? And supply chain security to me is really top of mind. We're happy to say that we partnered with a leading automotive manufacturer as part of a cyber readiness institute, to create awareness. I myself generated a video. We need more of that, because if you can cascade that across the length, depth, and breadth of the business, we can leverage the power of federation, like I was talking, the notion of better together, those alliances. And we see that actually even in the macro industry, because heard of the Spectra Alliance that has Okta, CrowdStrike, and Proofpoint, and the Zero Trust Alliance between Zscaler, Cloudflare, and SentinelOne. The world is realizing we are better together, so that's what we're trying to do.
So right back to you with this follow-up. I mean, how do you communicate with the board, with your senior leadership on the same threats, but then what you're doing? I mean, what are some effective strategies that you use to communicate with the C-suite around everything you just said?
Absolutely. So I think some principles are, you have to be able to first do enterprise risk assessment and living and breathing every year. We generate a quadrant so they can see all the different risks. We focus on the top risks. We try to quantify the risks, right? Because just saying the risk doesn't mean anything. You have to tell them what's the risk in business terms. Because you got to communicate in business terms, not in technical jargon. At the same time, you got to propose solutions to address the gaps. In this, they help, and they do want to help as long as you couch it in the right manner. They will do so, right? But what's very important too is to leverage storytelling. Because remember, board members are not security professionals, so you can always start telling stories to say leading breaches, what lessons have we learned, what good things your program is doing that would have helped that company, and vice versa. What you should be doing because of that breach. I think they relate a lot better. The storytelling is very, very important, right? And tell them, where your programs stand, lessons learned, and so on and so on. And last but not the least, look, these are business guys. They understand the balanced scorecard. So at any given time, it's very important to have, 3 to 5 to 7 key points. Where do you stand? Stack ranking them. What has been the accomplishment? What you're going to do? Those have been what we've been doing.
Great, thanks. Jason, same question to you. What are some best practices you've seen in communicating cyber risk and solutions to C-suite?
Yeah, so I think from that perspective, it really comes down to being able to take highly technical and complex concepts and use some sort of analogy to help bring it to something more basic, more understandable, right? Because you're dealing with folks that aren't always highly technical. They're on the business side of the equation, especially when you're talking to the board. So being able to put it in terms that they can understand and absorb makes a big difference. And with that, I find that it's also critically important to be open and honest. And that may not always be the easiest thing, but not only does it get you some amount of respect from those folks, but it also, what they've always told me is that we can't help you if we don't really understand the situation and you're not honest. So you really have to go in with that sort of thought process and bring that forward and leverage them as allies to help drive the business forward and make the best decisions based on the available data. And you can only do that, in my opinion, in an open, honest way, because you're all in it together, if you will, right? And so that's what I've seen be most effective.
So Richard, I want to twist it a little bit to go to you. How are security budgets, we go into that C-suite, we just heard some strategies, how are they holding up in the current, we don't know whether we're going to head into a recession now, the economy's tough out there. Where's priorities from your, you do global research, maybe in the U.S., but maybe it's different around the world. I don't know. Where is security in the priority scheme, and what are some thoughts around the security budgets?
Yeah, great question, Dan. So security is maintaining, but it is starting to slip and extend programs, right? So they can say, well, let's pay that next quarter, et cetera. So it's slowing down deployments. And I think part of the problem is, first of all, the boards, because we've been speaking their language to them, translating these highly complex concepts into language that a CFO can understand, or your second grader, we've lost some of the ability for them to understand that the bad guys aren't slowing down because there's a recession. If they come from the business world, everybody slows down. This is a great time to lay people off because everybody else is and won't look bad. This is a great time to raise prices because everybody else is. But it's not a good time to stop doing security because the bad guys are, to be in business, they have to attack you as well.
Fantastic. Maureen, from your perspective, same question. I mean, where's, budgets, security budgets, priorities, and then how do you measure that?
Well, I think that's a really good question because one of the things that we find is oftentimes the board always wants to use a benchmark. They're like, well, what is everybody else doing? So if everybody else is 2.5% of revenue and we're at 2.5% of revenue, that somehow is a good thing. And if you're spending more, that's somehow a bad thing. And I think our job is really to explain to the board, yes, we might be in the RHISAC, this is a category that we're in, but who says that Haynes down the road, their 2.5% clearly wasn't effective because they had a major breach last year. And if you look at the cost of that they put in their 10Ks, it was tens of millions of dollars. And I think that's what you really need to do is if it becomes in dollars and cents, it becomes very challenging. When it starts talking about, here's what I'm trying to protect, and this is the best way to protect it, and you need to really teach them, from that perspective, because when it becomes the dollars and cents, it's like, okay, well, I'm a better negotiator and I get cheaper software, so that means I can get more. Well, that's really isn't the message that we need to be talking to. We need to be talking to the message of what is your risk appetite. And based on your risk appetite, how much risk are you willing to absorb? And based on that, by the way, this is what it's going to cost. You're saying that you want to be best of breed and that your risk appetite is 4, and then we give you the budget and you're like, oh, well, maybe my risk appetite is really 3. And I think that becomes a continuing conversation. It's not just a once and done. It's a constant flow of information that you need to give to the board so that they can help understand and support the initiatives that we're trying to do.
Great, thanks. I'm going to come to the audience in about 5 minutes, so get your questions ready. We're going to go out and we want to hear. We have a mic. We want to make sure you hear your question with the microphone. But before we do, I want to do a little bit of a 90-degree turn here now. And some of you may remember, if you were following this panel earlier, a couple weeks ago, one told me is why do security pros fail? And so I want to actually, there's a little bit of a twist, and we all talk about people, process, and technology. Little story that I may share at the end here, but from my experience as Michigan CISO and some of the companies I've worked with, but I'd like to maybe just go down and get a brief answer or a story, if you want to share a story, from your perspective. Obviously teams are made of people. And so from an individual, from a career perspective, and or from a team perspective, what do you think are some of the, not to be number one, but some of the reasons that you see where projects do not go well? We always talk about on time, on budget, and that kind of thing. Maureen, we'll start with you, but anything maybe you can think of, just one thing, and obviously there's lots of reasons, but one thing you can highlight for our audience around, why people fail.
I think one of the biggest reasons that we fail in security is that we underestimate the value of relationships and being able to understand before we are understood. And I've seen this happen time and time again where we're coming in and we've got the numbers and we've got this is what we need to do, and we're not really taking that step back and understanding what is the business, what is IT, what are these other groups trying to do, and how can we support where they are? I mean, if we become, the Department of No, in fact, it's interesting because last year I had something that we called it going from the Department of No to the Department of Go, and that was actually a panel that I was running last year. If we can't do that, then people are just going to say, you are going to slow us down, you are not going to give us what we want to have, and then we've really failed. So we need to nurture those relationships all the time and get that buy-in and understanding so that they want to come to us.
So leading into that, before we go to Richard, I got to tell my story now then. So I got to say that. Okay, so I'll tell you all a quick story. I'll try and do it quick because it's about a 3-minute story. But going back to 2004, so this is going back, 19 years. I was the Michigan CISO. And Terry Takai was my boss. How many remember Terry Takai? Anybody out there know? Terry was our CIO in Michigan, reported to Governor Granholm at the time, who's now obviously Energy Secretary. Terry went on after being CIO in Michigan to be CIO in California, and then CIO for the U.S. Department of Defense. So Terry had a very prestigious career. She's now director of the Center for Digital Government in California. So Terry was my boss. And Terry gave me the job as CISO. She said, I want you to deploy secure Wi-Fi in all of our state conference rooms. Well, sounds like a pretty obvious thing in 2023. Well, at the time, Wi-Fi was on the no-do list for most security pros. I mean, so a lot of war driving stories. I was just talking earlier about how Best Buy was getting hacked into from parking lots in the cash registers, and you could pretty much drive around Lansing and do war driving and get in almost anybody's Wi-Fi network. And so I was, needless to say, I was the CISO who was against Wi-Fi. So we went to this conference room meeting. It was a state conference room with about 10 people, big conference room, you can picture it in downtown Lansing. 10 people around the table. We got to agenda item number 4. And Terry said, okay, Dan, you got 5 minutes. Tell us how we're going to do this project securely. And I handed out some sheets of paper. I said, please pass these around. And I had a stack of papers on my desk in front of me, on the table in front of me, and said, Terry, we're canceling this project. Wi-Fi is a bad idea, and I have these white papers from CIA, NSA, DIA, FBI. It's not secure. We can't do this. And let me explain why. And she said, stop. And then she said, I want everyone to leave the room but Dan. And so this was like a shock, right? So everyone, jumps up. I had never seen a government conference room in my whole life, before that or after that, emptied so fast. I mean, boom, everyone's out of the room. Literally, the meeting ended. Terry gets up from the end of the table, walks down to the middle, sits directly across from me, and looks me in the eye and says, Dan, if that's your answer, you can't be the CISO in Michigan. And she said, let me tell you why. I said, no, Terry, let me explain. I got all these white papers. Let me explain. And I said, no, stop. She said, I know you know your stuff. You're from NSA. We all know you're smart. You got your master's degree in computer science from Johns Hopkins. No one's questioning your technical skills. No one's questioning your knowledge. But I've been to Dow, Ford, Chrysler, and GM, and they all have Wi-Fi in their conference rooms. What do they know that you don't know? I'm giving you 1 week to find out. And if you don't have an answer for me, not implemented, but a plan, I want your resignation. So this was a shakeup for me, right? This is I'm like blown away, this proud, I don't know how old I was at the time, but I mean, every performance appraisal I had going back to NSA had been outstanding. I'd always got the best. I prided myself on doing a great job, and I was about to get fired. So I went back to my team, and my team was like, did you tell them we're not going to do Wi-Fi? And I'm like, no, we're doing Wi-Fi, guys. We're going to figure this out. We called Dow, Ford, Chrysler, GM. We found out what they did. We could tell you about it later over a beer and what they were doing differently than us. We implemented Wi-Fi. We got, 2 years later, we win the award for top government Wi-Fi project in the nation from all 50 states. But that isn't why I'm telling you this story. Some of you say, Dan, come on, Wi-Fi? Why are we talking about Wi-Fi? The issue is, I learned a real big lesson for me. That was a real paradigm shift in my career at that moment, is I need to be an enabler. I can't just say no, because if the business fails, you don't need security. And you got to get to yes, on time, on budget, with the right level of security. And I learned that the hard way, and I think as security pros, we hear that, and most people say, oh yeah, I'm an enabling CISO, I'm enabling. But the reality is, whenever some new technology comes out, cloud, AI, artificial intelligence, it could be IoT, you fill in the blank. BYOD, bring your own device to work. It's like, the answer's no. What was the question? I mean, you can't do that. You just can't say no and then figure it out later. And I learned that the hard way. It was really, literally an existential threat to my life. I was going to be fired. Before I really changed my direction and realized I had to work with the business. I had to get to yes. And I had to me, that's the biggest challenge in the mindsets of security pros, is that they have this attitude of the answer's no, what was the question? And really, and it's not just about Wi-Fi. You tell me any new technology, And it's going to be the same. So it's a challenge. How do you get to gold, silver, bronze? How do you bring them options? 2 years later, one more quick thing on this. 2 years later, we found the same thing again. We were bringing, we'll get to yes. We have a great solution for you, $2 million. And they're like, well, Dan, this is a $100,000 project. We can't, we're not giving you $2 million to do security for this. So offering options to the business, looking at your peers. State government's probably not rocket science. We're probably not the first ones in the world doing whatever it is you're doing. So looking at other options. If you're putting a man on Mars, maybe you're the first. Maybe you do need to really, really, get it right. But if we're just doing Wi-Fi in government conference rooms, there's probably somebody we can learn from and do it better. So that's my story. I agree 100%. How do you get to yes? How do you have an enabling mindset as a security pro? I think that's, for me, one of the biggest challenges. So, Richard, back to you.
Wow, after that, I got nothing. I'm passing the mic.
Wow, passing it right down. So I have to agree with everything you said. I mean, I think from my perspective, with the CISOs that I know, the first thing I'll say is it is the most difficult, at times the most thankless job that I've ever seen, right? And it is about enabling the business, but for me, when I think about security, I think about it from the standpoint that security is just a function of risk mitigation, right? There is no perfect security. So it really comes down to how do you balance those things? How do you bring to the business and deliver what they need while still, taking an acceptable amount of risk with whatever these projects are, whether it's Wi-Fi or the next new technology. So, for me, it's really about how do you balance those things and do it in a way that enables the business that you're trying to provide for, but also, protect it the best way that you can with the resources available. So, again, I think it's a thankless job at times, and everyone who has taken a CISO role, I applaud you because it is definitely not an easy role to have. Passing on.
All right, thank you, Jason. So, when I started Nexteer, I started alone, believe it or not, and I committed to an enterprise risk assessment. I went through it, met length, depth, and breadth of business, made a lot of friends, all that. In 60 days, created an enterprise risk assessment with the results of the quadrant and the action plan. 3 of the top risks were cloud computing governance, intellectual property protection, onboarding and offboarding. And my closing slide was, the principles of program going forward at the time is that security is an enabler, no fooling, people, process, and technology in concert, and having a culture of security. So the VIPs, they said, we understand the second two, but security is an enabler. They've heard of the no and all that stuff, right? Because, so I explained to them, look, how many passwords do you have? 20 passwords. I have 40 passwords, whatever. What do you do with them? I don't want to tell you. Truth is, many of them were writing on sticky notes and keeping in the wallet, right? So when we implemented a identity management framework, anytime, anywhere, authorized access with multi-factor, they needed one password of the protections, they could go. What about HR? HR has a new person coming, they'll send an email to someone, they'll send something to somebody else, and elapsed time of 10 or 15 days just to get a bloody laptop and an account. Now, when this system, automatic onboarding and offboarding, provision through HRR system, one-click deactivation, they got it within 2 years. That, in fact, I was right. And you've got to, but the important thing in this, you got to do what you say you're going to do. If I just said security enabler and did nothing, then...
Yeah. Great, thank you. Okay, this is your chance. I got a ton more questions, so I can keep going until 5 o'clock, but I want to hear what your questions are. So we have a microphone over here. If you could raise your hand real high. She's going to give you the microphone over here in the back, in the red. We're going to make sure we need to get these on microphone because we have people live. This is a live stream on the internet. So please give us your name and then give us your question.
Hi, my name is Enrico. I was wondering, do you believe in your industry that there's enough threat intelligence sharing? And to the extent that maybe there's not, do you think are there particular disincentives that you've encountered? And have they been an issue, I guess, within your own organizations on that basis?
Let's start with Richard on that. Threat intelligence. What, do you think there's enough threat intelligence sharing, Richard?
Yeah, there's threat intelligence available, and there is tons of sharing between the vendors, as well as you've got your choice of threat intelligence coming in. Quite often a target of an attack doesn't share the threat intelligence, but usually their breach incident response team does, right? They scrub it and tell you the indicators of compromise to look for. So I think threat intelligence is actually a bright light in our entire industry, and that it's there's a commercial reason for people to get involved in it and do that research. Of course, there's great solutions, at least one of them represented here, that pulls it all together and helps you make use of it and tie it into the rest of your SOC. So I'm very positive on threat intelligence. I think there is.
Anyone else? Comments? I just want to add one other thing to that, and I really would highly encourage people online or people in the audience, get involved in your ISAC, Information Sharing Analysis Centers. I know I worked many years, helped Will Pelgrin set up the MS ISAC, Multi-State Information Sharing Analysis Center. Basically, and that's a government, state and local governments sharing threat intelligence. They get it from DHS. They share it amongst each other. I know similar things are happening in automotive. There's an automotive ISAC. There's ISACs in energy. There's ISACs in financial services, where there's a lot of that happening in more of a closed community. So if you're not engaged in ISACs, information sharing analysis centers, I highly encourage you to do that, in addition to Richard's answer about working with the vendor community. So another question. Anyone else? Yeah, over here.
Yes, my name is James, and when you were talking about Wi-Fi, I was just curious, is anyone utilizing Bluetooth, and if you are, how are you securing it?
I'm not brave enough to use Bluetooth.
Give him his.
Turn it off.
Okay, who? Honestly, raise your hands if you use Bluetooth. Raise your hand. Okay, you got about 4 honest people here. No, just kidding. Just kidding. No, a lot of hands went up for those in the audience. We got maybe 12 or 13. Great, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Another question? Someone else? Questions in the audience? I'm going to go back to my questions here for the panel. Let's go to Maureen on this. What most excites you about the future of cybersecurity? What excites you about the future? And that could be technologies and developments, or it could be some new, it could be quantum computing, AI, and it could be anything. What excites you about the future?
What I really am most excited about is, we've spent the last X number of years with point solutions and more point solutions. What I'm really excited about is these are starting to converge, and so that we are getting closer to more of those end-to-end solutions, maybe multiple vendors snapped in. And that to me is, my 2 favorite words are effective and efficient. And you can ask anybody at Kontoor and they'll go, yeah, that's what she says. But that's kind of what we need to be. There's not a lot of us. We are never going to have more people than we have roles for. And so we need to be very effective and very efficient. And when I see those vendors who, they're kind of friendly competition, shared goals. Let's get some standardization so that you might still pick best of breed, but being able to have some of those platforms, that to me is exciting, because then we can actually take some of that and put it on more autopilot and really start kind of pushing out, because we've got 5G, we have people, I consider like the cyber threat actors like my children. They never feel like there's more times that they can't knock at the door asking for stuff. And so the bad guys aren't going to stop, and they're getting better and better at it. So the more that we can put things on autopilot and try to look to be able to challenge those threats as they become more and more sophisticated, will make us more successful in the long run.
Thanks. Anyone else? Yep.
As a lot of you, my friends know, and especially Koba, the thing that makes my heart sing is the notion of identity. So one of the futuristic things that's really exciting me is I worry a lot about consumer privacy, signing up a website, etc. So one of the emerging things that I'm really looking forward to, I hope it comes to fruition, is self-sovereign identity.
We're going to be good friends.
That was planned.
And self-sovereign identity, it's the notion of you know, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's kind of like the web of trust, PGP, same sort of stuff built for what I call the United Nations of Identity, right? Powered by blockchain. So you don't need to any longer be giving passwords. You'll issue a token to different services that only you give it. So I think that's a very powerful paradigm, self-sovereign identity, or SSI. At the same point, from the other side, I'm very, very excited about artificial intelligence and quantum computing. I do realize that it has a double-edged sword because it can do a lot of things for security on the defensive side, but the offensive guys can as well, so there's a fine balance. Those are the things that really sing to me these days.
Things are moving fast. Jason?
All right, so you brought up self-sovereign identity, and that's a personal favorite of mine. And, you know, I would even go further to say, you know, taking self-sovereign identity and the ability to put back in control the person who's asserting their identity and control what aspects of that identity they deliver downstream to those services, right? Not everything about you needs to be shared for all usage scenarios, right? And so that's part of what I very much like about it. And I personally think if you take that and you start to combine it with what we're seeing as a trend with edge-based distributed ML, where you can start to build personal models for yourself that travel with you, that add into that whole ecosystem to be able to assert your identity and do claims and proofs along that path. I think that's where things will evolve to, and you'll get to a point where authenticators are irrelevant and you really have the ability to prove who you are based on all of the information that surrounds you. We walk around in an information cloud. We're generating telemetry data continuously. And right now it's being absorbed by maybe folks we don't want to absorb it so they can sell things to us. And I think that paradigm needs to change over time so that we can be back in control of who and where we assert our identity to and what we share. So I'll...
Quick words. So well said. Here, this time my turn. So
No high fives allowed.
That's
No,
that's really great, Jason. You know, a couple of quick things. So, you know, the benefit to you right now, you know, you go from country to country. You've got to give you a passport. You got to carry your visa, etc. Once that comes to fruition, one day you won't really have to do anything because you go, they scan your face. And they'll, you know, you'll press a button of some sort of authenticator or whatever magically. But the things that I need to say of self-sovereign identity is not only on a personal basis, there's powerful paradigms in enterprise. And more importantly, one of the things that's very close to my heart is supply chain security. Because remember, chain is as strong as weakest link. If you think about the same things Jason was so eloquent can be extended to supply chain, I think there can be a paradigm shift.
Great, thanks. Question from the audience. We have somebody on the internet. Go ahead.
Dan, we got a question from Matt Mason.
Okay.
His question is, can we get examples of your hardest sells to the board, either in proposed security projects or ways to lower risk? How did you overcome this difficulty?
Okay, so the question again, hardest sells to the board, and then how did you overcome those? Maureen?
I think that the hardest sell that we have on the board really goes back to, and I know I had mentioned it before, was that the industry budget should be our budget because we're all different organizations. And what we are really doing is it's really key to be able to show kind of that, you know, if we want to be world class and this is the path, then this is the cost of entry. In addition, this is the, you know, potential savings associated with it. So I think that that becomes very difficult because, you know, when you're going to take, and I'm going to talk about the IoT environment. I mean, we have, you know, factories, you know, manufacturing distribution centers that, again, have a lot of legacy equipment, and it's difficult for that board to really understand that piece, to be able to make the value proposition on why would they want to invest it there instead of investing in a new line of clothing, because we are competing with every other part of the business. And so that's what we have found is to be able to show those clear metrics deliver what we say we're going to deliver, so when we go back for more, then we've already established ourselves as being a credible, source of truth.
Great story. I have one quick example I can share on this topic. When I was state CISO, we used to do road shows. I highly recommend you do road shows. What we would do, we'd go around to different agencies, talk about their situation, the good, the bad, the ugly, what they were doing well, what the industry was doing well, And some directors clearly got it. Some were all in. Some loved it, were supportive. Others not so much. And we had one director, I'm not going to name the agency, but he was really kind of an opponent of our whole security program. And it was actually really only one agency in state government that was like this. But we did a lot of research. And one of the things we did was we found out who this leader, but his colleagues, who did they listen to? Who were their I don't say heroes, but who were they, who in the country was the model for them? And we discovered that there was, in fact, an agency in Arizona, which was their counterparts, that they could do nothing wrong. I mean, whatever Arizona was doing in this area, they were the heroes. They were the ones everybody needed to be following. Well, we reached out to their security team in Arizona, a couple layers below this director, and they had a great cybersecurity program, and they had a great relationship with their cybersecurity director. So we actually talked to them and planted some ideas and said, are you guys doing this, this, and this, some things we want to do in Michigan? And they're like, yeah, we're doing all those things, and our director is very, very supportive of that. So bottom line, we kind of worked up and around, sideways, and then back up. So through Arizona, literally, they had their director talk to the director of this agency at a conference that they were both attending and saying, you guys doing this A, B, C, D, E? And they're like, I don't think we're doing those things, and I think we need to be doing those in Michigan. So literally, the guy got back to Michigan, true story. He called us in and said, I need a meeting right away with the security team. We got in there, and he said, we need to be doing these things that Arizona's doing. Boom, 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 boom. Guess what? Boom. Done. We got the budget. We got the authority. So what's the message? Work with colleagues. Think creatively. Think about everyone is influenced by somebody. And we've all had different people in our careers that, maybe they're very smart people, but maybe they're difficult to work with for whatever reason, or they've got their own set of criteria or their own priorities. And they can be difficult, but if you think creatively and look at who influences those people, you can oftentimes plant ideas and actually get your results you're looking for. So that was a success story we had in Michigan. We have maybe time for one more question from the audience. If not, okay, question. We need a microphone here, and then we're going to do wrap-ups with the panel, give them one final word of wisdom here, and we're going to wrap it. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dan. I really appreciate you guys, wonderful souls sitting there, and you are all under the very respectful positions. So my question is, did you guys waited until certain incident happened to get the budgets approved, or how you guys managed to convince the above you guys to get the budgets approved? How that you managed? Because some companies, they don't even think about, no, cybersecurity, I'm not going to approve it. But how you guys manage to approve or get the approve, are the budgets sufficient to manage to buy the products, to secure what all you guys talked about?
Okay, we're back to buy-in. Go ahead, down here. How do you get board buy-in, and especially if there's maybe some resistance?
Yeah, I'll continue on with the example I gave earlier about the risk assessment and the identity management program. When the time came to invest in that, we worked with a partner who shall be nameless, and it was very expensive. So the strategy that I used was multi-pronged. First of all, I wanted to tell them no project is going to benefit just by the hard savings, right? It's not possible. So what are the intangible benefits, quantifying the risk, and showing them that if they did that, they would not be some of the poster child breaches like an Anthem at the time or Target. Because they understood that, they got that. But then even all that thing wouldn't have benefited me if it had not been for the power of federation. I sat down with the vendor I was interested in, explained my vision, and I will tell you, I won't tell you the exact percentage discount, but they came to the table with such a significant discount in return for my promise that I would support them to reference calls, white papers, speaking, which I did, so as to then be able to invest in that. And everyone benefit from that. So it's like a multi-step. Explain a vision, quantify the risk, compare how you will not be a poster child in the newspaper, how this will solve. The same point, get your partners involved, because everyone loves a success story, and they will help you. To the extent that even during COVID, I went to all my partners, I wanted to protect my team. They all came with further concessions. People care. Everyone knows the power of federation. It works. We are better together.
Let me, one more comment, and then we're going to go down and give each panelist like 1 minute to do a final word of wisdom and one takeaway. But I just want to give one other answer to that question in addition. I think, when you think about budgets, you think about authority, you always have leaders, followers, and laggards. So you really want to be thinking in terms of how do you get, we talked earlier about relationships. We talked about, looking at the board, every individual relationship needs to be worked up, in front of that budget meeting, really building those relationships. I tell people, do lunch. Go not just with the technology or the security team, with the business areas. Sit down and talk. Have good relationships. I mean, there's a blog you can go out if you're watching this. It's basically why security pros fail and what you can do about it. There's 7 reasons. One of them was buy-in, getting to yes. There's 7 reasons, but a lot of it is about relationships, building budgets through examples and the same kinds of stuff we've been saying on the panel. So I think a big key is really around, yes, it's having the detail, having the specifics around the specific item you want to purchase, but a lot of it is about trust and building trust and having those relationships with those key people. And if you don't have that, building a consensus, maybe not everybody on the board, but getting a majority that's going to support you. I think that's really key. So with that, we're going to...
let me just add one thing to that. So in my experience, what I've found is that the worst thing you can do is not understand the individual objections you're going to run into.
Exactly.
So when you put together a group of executives, and it's time consuming, and maybe it shouldn't need to be this way, but in my experience, what you have to do is pre-socialize whatever you're trying to get achieved with each one of those individually.
Exactly.
And not be surprised, learn what their objections are, where they may have challenges with it, and when you go into that broader group with everyone together where it's time to make a decision, be able to understand and have mitigated some of those concerns that they may each individually have. And that's the way you get it over the goal line, because if you have that information ahead of time, you can adjust your pitch to make sure that you're addressing everyone's individual concerns that they may not express in that group meeting. And that's what I've found to be most effective. So,
Jason, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. We're almost done. We're gonna go down and we're gonna give each panel. We're gonna go to 30 seconds. So tough here. 30 seconds each. We'll start with Maureen. We'll go right down. One takeaway, one thing you want to leave with them if they were to think about this panel discussion a week from now. What one thing would you want to remember? It could be something you've already said. It could be something you didn't get a chance to say. One takeaway from the CISO panel, Maureen.
Okay, what I would say is fail forward. Not every project is going to work, but don't allow that failure to color your future activities.
Thank you. Richard.
Yeah, I just want everybody to think about what happens to security. I think about what happens to the industry, but what happens with the attackers and your ability to defend when we're in a period of rapid technology change. Because we are entering the most rapid period of technology change in my life. And I've been there from mainframes to the cloud to where we are today, and artificial intelligence is the biggest change to technology ever.
Thank you.
all right, so I guess to add to that, I would say that the only constant is change, and the problems we have today are the things that we solve tomorrow. So continue to look. If you have a problem, there will be a solution. Seek it out.
Since I became a CISO many years ago, we have progressed from the technical CISO to business CISO to risk-based CISO, and now the era of the transformational CISO, a no-fooling business leader who leads change and transformation. So the skill set and portfolios you get are some of these: collaboration and communication, envisioning and storytelling, relationship management, program management, negotiation and vendor management, strategic cost optimization, and change management. And if you don't have all of them, make sure your team does.
Great, thank you. Can you join me in thanking the panel for their great job today? We really appreciate. And I'm not sure if Kim has any final words of wisdom. Is she around at all? Kim here? Kim, is there any things that we want to say? Are we going to wrap? Any final words before we dismiss the group?
Well, we're not going to dismiss because we're going to do prizes. Okay. Well, how about a round of applause one more time for... And then how about a bigger round of applause for all of our sponsors, because if it wasn't for them, we couldn't be here today. All right, so we are going to pull our prizes. The bar's still open. If you guys need any more drink tickets, we have the man of the hour here. So we have tons of prizes, and like I said, the bar's open. And I am just waiting for my counterpart out there to bring all the prizes out. And my tech team is